introduce our guest co-host, Ms. Jazz Steele. She is survivor, a woman's wellness advocate, and author. Emotional, mental, and financial wellness are the foundation of her message to inform, impact, and inspire women from all around the world to heal and thrive. And a little bit about Mike. He is a Renaissance man, and a voice of determination of the 21st century. Mike is a man on a mission to empower others to identify and fulfill their purpose. He accomplishes this by guiding people from all walks of life through a system that leads a generational legacy of wealth. And that's what are all about here on Let's Talk About It. Thank you guys for coming with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So Jasmine, you and I connected via phone last week, and you said this brother is where we all want to get to. So we won't let you lead the conversation because, there's a lot of things that you guys have going on, something going on this weekend that we want to invite people to attend. But I want you to lead this conversation because you know Mike very well, and you can help translate what you want our guests and listeners to know about him and how he can help them become successful.
Well, you know what? I thought that was hilarious when you asked me to co-host. I said, "Oh, y'all want me to run the show? Okay." But no, thank you for having us so much. I love, the messaging that you all have here about, building wealth and talking about finances. And I think that that's a topic that we really need to normalize in our community. Mike and I, he could share, I'll let him share his story, but we were, both raised in single parent homes. And so the conversation is different, when you're raised by a mom who's getting up to go to work every day, just trying to keep food on the table. And so to be able to be mentored by him really the past almost 17 years, man. Almost 17 years. How old are you? No.
Putting you on the spot, man.
It's just been it's a blessing to be able to have examples of Black success and, really Black men being successful where they're not athletes or entertainers, you know what I mean? And so being able to normalize some of the conversations we need to have around money and building wealth. And so with that being said, Mr. Humes, I'll pass it on over to you to share, a little bit about your background, where you came from and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I'm honored and humbled to be on the show. And, really, I grew up just like, Jasmine just mentioned. She said we both grew up in a single parent household, not the same single parent house, although it may have felt the same when we converse and talk about, some of the experiences. I grew up here in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm on the East Coast, born and raised in Washington, D.C. And, single mom raised my sister and I. And I grew up always wanting to give back, always wanting to retire my mom. Actually, was literally my goal. I had two goals. One was to live to be 17. And when I think back on that goal, because I had so many friends who I lost along the way, growing up in the inner city of Washington, D.C., I just can't believe how far I've come. When you think about just aspiring to be 17, right, graduating from high school. But it was also once I started working at 14, I was very athletic. I played sports. I thought I was pretty good. I was, but it was something about eating was important in my household, which meant I had to get a job early. So that started at about 14. And so I worked all the way through high school, paid my way through college, didn't graduate. I'm a fifth year sophomore. I was bringing down the GPA at a whole university. And thus I became your favorite mailman. And I started that career at 21. And I just remember the goal, and I guess this goes to you, Clinton. It was to buy a home. It was to be a homeowner, right? At 21, that was my goal, was to become a homeowner. I was delivering mail in Washington, D.C. to all these multi-million-dollar residences that I didn't know were inside of my city, right? They were in a different part of town that I was delivering mail. But every single day I saw these folks who just had what I wanted. And what blew me away is half of them were working from home. Like every day when I came past, it was just me and the dogs out there. And where I delivered mail, everybody had a dog. Like the dogs had dogs where I delivered mail. Like everybody had a dog. Right? That's the wealthy areas of town. And it dripped on me enough to the point where I knew I wanted to buy a house. And I set a goal to purchase my first home within that first year. I was blessed to do that. Nice. And then I realized I was stuck. And I don't know if any of us have ever felt stuck, with the job maybe paying us just enough so we can't quit, and we're working just hard enough, right? So we can't get fired. And I was working 70, 80 hours a week, and I wanted to retire my mom, and I felt stuck into the point where I knew that was not going to be the case. I could barely take care of the responsibilities that I had put myself in with that 30-year mortgage and working 70, 80 hours. And when you're 21, 22 and, earning a nice income, you can run a route at that age. But I saw what my future looked like because I was in a building with 400 people. And, there was no positive energy at all within the confines of that place. I would be listening to my music on the way in, my gospel on the way in, so I get my mind right. And I remember this vividly because I would go in with that positive disposition and speak to the supervisor, and they just look at me like I was crazy. And I mean, that attitude, that mindset, right? The person that the negative husband maybe yells at the wife, who fusses at the kids, who kicks the dog, who kills the goldfish, right? The whole house just dysfunctional.
Right, toxic.
And it's very toxic. And that was the mindset. And that's what I was becoming, as a result of being in that environment. And I'm just thankful that I had mentors and I had people who came along the way to steer me in a different direction.
Cool.
Nice.
Are you going to ask?
Yeah. So, Mr. Mike, I guess I should call you like Mike, the money guy, the mailman.
Not just Mike.
I need to upgrade my bag from a mail bag to the money bag. But yeah, I mean, it's so inspiring to hear your story, and also just to build on what Jasmine just said. We need to normalize talking about building wealth in our community. And how you actually did it in terms of you didn't go the entertainment or the sports route, which is always the narrative that's put on our community. And we also had a great conversation last week about that. Also, when we compared the top millionaires and the habits that they have, especially, and we kind of compared it also. Pivot that made you want to go from being a mailman and having a 9-to-5 job, now becoming an owner. And that's a big pivot for people it's hard for them to actually transition into that.
Right. Yeah. For me, it was, I knew that I needed to be able to control my own time. I was trading time for dollars. And I knew that there was, in my early 20s, I could do that. Right. I could work around the possibility of going postal. Right. It was just a negative environment. Right. And I was young and from the hood. So that was not a good comments in my life. And I'll never forget it. The late, great Jim Rohn, right. One of the best to ever, talk from a personal development standpoint. He said disgust is a negative emotion, but could have a positive effect. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget my day of disgust of Virginia. It was a good couple hours away from us. And I remember calling in that morning about 5 a.m., 4:30, 5 a.m. And as I was explaining to my supervisor what happened, that my grandfather wasn't expected to make it through the day, they cut me off and said, whoa, you need to be here and let your family tells you how that situation plays out. Quote unquote, like those were the exact words. And I can't tell you what I said afterward. I know this is God radio, so I can't. But I realized at that point that, the old philosophy or soliloquy, if your name is on that building, then you could be possibly building someone else's dream.
That's right.
And but I didn't have an out. I didn't have an out at that point. So I had to suck it up. I had to stay there. I was always a hard worker. I just needed to turn that work ethic into a place where I could work a little smarter versus just physically working harder. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of those moments that I'll never forget. I'll never forget how I felt. And I'll never forget that it started me on my journey of looking feverishly for the right opportunity and really looking for mentors and people who I could get around. I keep talking about the post office in the environment. The goal was always to get away from those who had my problem and surround myself with those who had my answer. And my answer was to become financially independent. It was to be able to give back to my community. I do a lot of philanthropic work, do on a small scale when it was just me. And so that was really the moment of disgust that led to, I would say, the start of what we've been able to do.
And real quick, I want to hit on that a little bit because there's nothing wrong with working hard. There's nothing wrong with working a W-2 job. So I look at W-2s all day. But then you were talking about reaching the next level, which we should look at our lives as steps. Okay, I reached this step, time to move on to the next step. And you're talking about financial independence. but it seemed like the most important thing for you was like independence of being free to do what you needed to do. Quickly, I have a son, and he has some health issues, and he's on dialysis 5 times a day. And I have a job. I'm W-2, but I have a job. I'm a little bit more flexible with my hours. I couldn't imagine being at a job where I had my boss says, no, I don't care what your son is going through. You got to be here this time at this date. I mean, that that feeling of someone having that power over you. Oh my goodness, it is like the worst feeling in the world. I hate it when someone told me, "Yo, go to lunch at 12 and be back by 1." I was like, I can't do this no more.
Right.
Right.
But the idea of someone saying, you going through that, seeing your grandfather basically having his last days of life, and someone saying, "No, I don't care what that's going through. Your obligation is here, not your family." I think that's so powerful, and it seems like you keep that with you, and you never will forget that. And that's
Ever.
what every time you like have a mindset of, "Oh man, today, oh nope, can't do it, can't do it," because I remember what happened so many years back when my job said, "No, you can't do this. Your obligation is to us, not your family."
No, yeah, you're absolutely right, and I hold on to that because it is motivating to remind myself not just of where I've come from, but where so many others are and where they aspire to be. And I know if God is no respecter of person. What He did for me can do for anybody, and if I could do it, anyone can accomplish it, right? And so the key was getting around the right people. It was getting around people who were going and growing right in the direction I wanted to go. And so I tried everything. I started, just anything I could do. It was tough to put on an additional uniform though, when you're already working 10, 12-hour days. And so I was looking for something or a way where I could get around someone who could, or individuals who could mentor me, where it didn't cost me a whole lot. I didn't have a whole lot. And so you just talked about it, William, feeling stuck and not being able to imagine someone telling you that you can't be there for your son. And it's a feeling of helplessness, and as men, it's really tough because we hold that in.
Yep.
We hold it in. And so we could still go to work. We could still be there for our family. We could still, spend time with our friends. We could still socialize and do all the things we do. And mentally on the inside, we've given up, It's like mental incarceration. I say mental incarceration will lead to mental suicide, right?
Right.
Where you've literally given up on the inside, but you're still doing all those same things. And so, it's so many different ways out now. Obviously we're in a different time. There are more entrepreneurs than ever before.
Right.
I don't think people don't want to work for anybody as much anymore. Everyone is aspiring to be an entrepreneur, and that's a beautiful thing. But I loved my job. Like I wanted to be a mailman. So not to get it twisted, I loved that career. I loved who I worked around in terms of some of the camaraderie and what it taught me and the work ethic that was displayed there. So it definitely shaped and molded me into being able to be that person that says, if I could give my job 10 to 12 hours a day, there's no way I'm not going to give an hour or two every single night for my family, right? For my legacy.
Right.
There's no way I'm not going to be willing to do that. And that's a shift in thinking that so many people have to have.
Right.
So Jasmine and Mike, so last week we had this conversation about income and wealth for the Black community. And over the last couple of weeks, the report came in that the Black people's spending power went up from 1.3 trillion to 1.6 trillion. So our spending power went up, but our wealth went down by 14%.
Wow.
And other groups' wealth went up as long as their spending power went up too. So I'm going to ask you guys, what are your guys' thoughts about our spending power going up, but our wealth going down by 14%? So we'll start with you, Jasmine, since we have.
Well, I was actually over here taking notes. Great questions, guys. But the first thing that popped in my head with that question, I didn't know that statistic, was lack of education, and then also lack of applied education. And I think that, like Mike said, we're in a time where we have access to everything now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were joking the other day about the Encyclopedia Britannicas. You guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
Those big old thick books
Right.
that we had to go in, and
Yep.
mama wouldn't even let you touch them. They were like, prized possessions in the house. And so, access to information was different 20, 30 years ago. And so we have the access to the information, but what I feel is it's the lack of applying it.
Mm.
And it kind of really was going to lead me into a question for you, Mike, in terms of like how important personal development is. But
Yeah.
I'll let you answer the question first. And
That's a good segue
Mm.
too.
yeah,
No, that's a scary stat, to think that
It
our
is.
buying power increases, but our wealth decreases. And, obviously we're talking about financial wealth, right? Because wealth
Right.
can be defined in so many
And
different ways.
all the other groups are going up.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. It just shows that there is a collective, a sense of community, right? A collective mindset when it comes to being able to empower each other. When our buying power is up, it means that we can do more, but we're doing less, or we're not really. It's education, as Jasmine mentioned. It's just not understanding the importance of it. And look, I'm in my late 40s now, so right, I'm on the on the edge of 50, right, which
Right.
is
Black
still
don't
like,
crack, brother.
right. I'm right on the cusp, and so I started this journey in my 20s, and so my thinking is different than it was then. But at the same time, the more we know, the more we do. You know better, you do better.
Right.
Right.
And so I think, as Jasmine mentioned, there's such a wealth of information out there. It's just up to us to really be able to galvanize and get together and get people in front of the information, like your show, where they can hear those statistics without knowing it. If we know better, we do better, right? Then we can come to the table. I read the book years ago called The Jewish Phenomenon, right? That talks about the wealth and how that dollar circulates in the Jewish community. And I don't want to quote it because I'm sure it's different today, right? If I check the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they would give me something different. But I remember how it circulated maybe 8 times or 10 times before that dollar left their community. In the Asian community, 6, 7 times before it left their community. In the Hispanic community, it circled at least 2 times, right? The Caucasian community, right? It circled. African American community, 1 time. It was in and out. And so to know that those things still haven't changed, it's just up to us to to really collectively come together. It's great to be able to celebrate success stories. What I pride myself on, and Jasmine can attest to what we've been able to accomplish, is it's not one person, right? Trust me, within my circle, I'm average, right? And I love that, because I have to still get around people who, when we finish conversing, I got to go and look up what they talked about, look up the words, right? And my palms are sweaty when I'm in a certain environment, because you can't be the strongest person in your circle. And so I think that's what I'm most proud of. It's one thing to have eclipsed a level of success, a 7-figure income, by 31. I was blessed to be able to do that. But I'm surrounded by a lot of people who've been able to do it, and they look like me, right? And that's a great feeling, because we resolved early on that we needed every single story. So I needed Jasmine's story. As we started to partner, it was like, I need you as a single mom, as a survivor, as a self-care advocate, as a coach, as an author, to be able to see you spend the time you spend with your beautiful daughters, to be able to spend the time that she spends coaching and teaching others, to be able to watch her talk about her journey of self-care and going through what she's gone through, but still become financially independent, where she was able to walk away from her career and surpass her income. And so those are the stories. So we need every single story, I think, in order to show that it isn't just those areas that we think, whether it's real estate or whether it's athletics, athletes or entertainers, or whatever the market may say it is, right? That any and every sector or person has an opportunity to become successful, right? Wealth is not dictated by the economy, right? It's not dictated by who's in office. It's dictated by our philosophy.
That's very correct.
It's all based on your way of thinking.
That's well said. That's well said. And I want to touch on just expound upon what you all saying, because what you all just said was so important, especially with Jasmine pointing out the disconnect with the information that's out there, because this is the information age we live in. This is the age of information. If you have the more information, you can go online and learn anything you want. Even how to cook. So So access to information is there. Now, implementation is not. But at the same time, too, what Mike just said is that you in an environment, because I always believe where focus goes, energy flows. So
Right.
if you're not in the right place where you can actually use that information, or somebody can teach you, or you're seeing that information actually being implemented. So I mean, one of the things that you I want you, Mike, to expound on is you said that you went after a mentor. Now, what made you feel that you needed a mentor, and at the same time too, how did you approach having getting a mentor? And Jasmine, I want you to also to chime in also, is how because you said Mike is your mentor, but how did you see how did you find Mike Mike as your mentor? Where did you search to find a mentor? Because there's a lot of people out there want to make that step, but at the same time they can't find the right environment or the people who can teach them. So, or people, I mean, and you're all busy, so the time is an issue for people who are operating at a higher level. So,
Right.
I just want you all to just kind of like expand on that question.
Absolutely. Jasmine, I guess we start with you, right? With that, how you found me, right? Or the opportunity. How did you find me? Let me find out. How did you find me?
Well, I actually found you because you were being featured on the cover of a magazine at the time, Success from Home magazine, and a gentleman had approached me about a business opportunity for me to take a look at. And so, I mean, that's technically how I found him. Is it was through a perfect stranger, and Mike was on the cover of a magazine, and I ended up being involved in the same business that Mike is involved in with Legal Shield. And so, how does someone find a mentor? It may not be somebody walking up to you, handing you a magazine, but it's finding out, what you want to do, what industry you want to be in. And then, like you said, we're in the information age. So we have social media, which makes it very easy to access people and to reach out to people. A lot of times, mentors, I mean, Mr. Humes, I keep wanting to call you Mr. Humes back and forth, but, Mike, he wasn't my mentor right away. A lot of my mentors were, in books and in audios,
Mm.
and that's how we can start. It may not always necessarily be a person that you can pick up the phone and talk to, it may be someone in a book. But I say definitely whatever industry it is that you want to be a part of, then get in the room with the folks that are doing it. Introduce yourself, and really just put in the work. And when you start to put in the work and you allow that work to marry you developing as a person, that personal development, that's when you start to attract the mentors, and you start attracting the business, and the success really comes to you. But you got to put yourself out there, and not be afraid. So, I mean, that's kind of my roundabout way of answering that question.
Nice.
Yeah, I think one thing that was key was, and it goes back to wealth. You just talked about it, and it was, Jasmine was able to see someone that heard a story that resembled her story, because
Yes,
it was rare that
that was
I've
it.
ever been in anything where I didn't. I'm a single father of two daughters, right? One who's now and Michaela and Tiara, our daughters are happen to be the exact same age. So someone shared a story with her and said, "Here's a single father with his daughter," and her story was the epitome of that. And I added on another daughter; she added on two. So if I add on one more, will you add on two more? Is that how this works? But
I'm done.
you're done, yeah. So am I. But it was just, for me, it was getting around people. Now, I've always had mentors. I had mentors growing up, and I think we should have mentors in every area of our life, first and foremost. So when I start every year, I want to have a mentor spiritually, a mentor physically, like a coach, a workout partner, right? Whether it's for business, right? Uh, you name it, right? Emotionally, right? I think it's so important that we talk to people uh, about our journey, or about the traumas that we've gone through. So I'm looking for coaches in every area of my life, and sometimes they cost. The great thing about how I was able to attract mentors, and it shows you how long Jasmine's been in personal development, because she said audios, right? Right? If you're going back to cassettes, right? That's a long time, but that was key, and that's what I did. It started with uh, people who I couldn't personally be around. I mentioned Jim Rohn, right? Les Brown, Og Mandino, Willie Jolly here locally, right? It was so many amazing people who I got a chance to hear first. And they became what I would call my mental board of directors, right? Where I started to ask these individuals or think, well, what would they do? How would they handle this situation? And that's what I did before I finally was able to get around actual people. And I started in the network marketing industry, to be clear, direct sales industry, because it was the cheapest way that I can invest, less than, I don't know, $500 in anything pretty much back then. And I was going to be able to get around people who were successful, and they were literally going to mentor me, for that investment, just based on my work ethic and whatever I was going to bring to the table. And that just blew me away.
Nice.
It allowed me to get around folks who earn 6 and 7 figures. And that's not always the case, because in most opportunities or most places, it's more of a competition. That's what I found in corporate America. I could run a route pretty fast when I was in my 20s. And so the older carriers would give me twice as much work, right, to slow me down than they were supposed to, because they wanted to protect their job, right? And in the direct sales industry, it just wasn't like that. It just wasn't like that. So I was able to get around people who were willing to mentor me. And it's why we so freely mentor so many people. Our mantra has been faith, family, finances is third, right? Faith, family, finances, and we added fitness a few years ago. And it starts with mental fitness, right, through personal development, and then the physical fitness as well. So that was key, getting around folks. And then once you, as Jasmine mentioned, you start to attract it. That's the first thing, is you got to put yourself out there.
Right.
And so we started to attract it, and it started to put me in rooms where I could spend time with the late, great Paul J. Meyer, right, the godfather of personal development. If you don't know who that gentleman is, I mean, this gentleman that sold $2 billion worth of his own material decades ago, right? And spending personal time with that gentleman on an annual basis, sharing the stage with Jim Rohn, right? He was a mentor. Same thing with Les Brown and so many others. It's just been a blessing, and one that I never take for granted, because it's allowed me to give back and show others that they can do the same.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that, because that reminds me a lot of Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar was the first personal development person I heard about. And he used motivation, like, people talk about, oh, you don't need motivation, or motivation, you go to this and only lasts for this long. Here's what, you got to use that personal development daily, like you take a shower. It's daily. It's not just, once a week or once a month. It's daily. And a lot of times I have to remind myself of that, because I sometimes, oh man, I'm going through this. No one understands me. Nobody knows, that type of thing. And then you hear other people's story and how they overcame, and it's like, oh yes, I need to do it. I need to do it. So I agree. Having those mentors is extremely important, because without having someone help lift you up, then it's hard for yourself to climb yourself up. And then while someone's lifting you up, you can help lift someone else up.
Right.
So I think that's excellent what you guys are doing.
And one of the things go ahead.
I'm sorry. One thing that, and Jasmine said this, she was on my podcast a couple months ago. So We Won't Quit podcast, right? My quote is, and I've always lived by the mantra, it's impossible to stop a man or woman who will not quit. And something that Jasmine, you said on that podcast that just everyone still resonates with them. And it goes to what you just said as well, William, is giving. You can't give from an empty cup.
Oh no!
Right.
Oh no!
You just said
and that's so key. Like, if you're not building yourself up, if you don't start your day at 150, listen, somebody cut you off in traffic, you're already at 70, right? When you walk in. And it was so profound, and Jasmine can probably elaborate on it, but that was it. You can't, so you've got to get that motivation. I'm always telling Alexa as I'm walking through the house, like when we chimed in, the televisions had YouTube on the back, where it's personal development is something that's growing me. You're either growing or you're dying. Like, there is no in between.
Yeah.
Right.
It's every single day. So you've got to put that positivity in, especially in the times we live in now.
Right. And one of the things that you'll point out that's so in common with what you all two said about seeking a mentor, because a lot of people who seek mentors expect to just go up to a mentor, a busy person, and say, hey, you know what, I want you to mentor me, and they have to drop everything. And when they don't see that mentor reaching back out, they tend to get discouraged. But what I liked about both of y'all is that y'all didn't actually go approach a mentor expecting them, but y'all approached them actually wanting to give something in return. So, because Jasmine approached you and she wanted to join your team, and you approach your mentor, and it was like you were interested in learning, but you wanted to join the team and find out how you can contribute. So it's a technique in which I say that, and I want to let everybody know, because that's a common thing that I see between both of y'all, is that y'all went in willing and open to actually contribute, not just take, like not just I'm saying, okay, I need you to teach me how to get to that level. You want to be able to contribute to that person's time, because that's time that person or you're taking away to give to somebody. So they have to be willing to at least have something in some skin in the game, basically, I would say.
Yeah. And listen, I've given where I'm giving 100%, and someone else is giving me 50%.
Right.
I can't give you 100 if you're not giving me 100. Like, that's just not the case. And,
Right.
And so, absolutely, there has to be some skin in the game. You have to want it for yourself.
That's
right.
right.
There has
That's
to be
right.
a strong why. Right.
Right.
If I want Clinton to mentor me in real estate, or either of you gentlemen in whatever you're successful in, I have to bring some value to the table. It can't just be where I expect you to take time away from your families.
Mhm.
Right. If you're not willing to take time away from your family, but you
Right.
want me to take time away from my beautiful girls, it doesn't work that way. So absolutely, our expectations have to be different. And I think that's something in our community, right? When we go back to just almost that hookup mentality that we've had, that expectation of someone just giving us a fish versus teaching us how to fish.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
So we have to bring something to the table.
Awesome.
Yeah, Jasmine, tell us a little
Yes,
bit
sir.
about your story, because I found out some things about you that I didn't know through your Instagram and Facebook posts about being a teen mom and then graduating from college with your degree. And so, talk a little bit about how you felt, if you felt this way, kind of stuck, and then overcoming that.
Well, that's a very broad question. But really, my background, I'm glad you did a little bit of research. And I really like to say that my story really started with me embarking upon the journey of healing myself. So I came from a line of domestic abuse in my family. So my mom was a domestic abuse survivor. Her sister was not a survivor. And I found myself in my very first toxic relationship at 15 years old. And so I think when it comes to our community, our childhood has a huge effect on our mentality as adults. And if we don't deal with some of those things that, plagued us or traumatized us in the past, it can really hold us back and have us, spending more than we're saving, the mentality. I actually am listening to a podcast right now, and she's talking about how the trauma around money in our community, the mindset. And so having witnessed that being my environment, growing up, a lot of the tools weren't there. And so, I didn't really get an aha moment until my mid 30s, where I really wanted to take responsibility for my life. I always felt that there was something inside of me. I always wanted to do more. I knew that God had a big purpose for me, but I was holding myself back in a lot of ways, and a lot of them were emotional and mental. And so, really coming out of that relationship, which was a big part of my life, 20 years of my life, 3 children came out of that. And as a woman, I can really speak from a female's perspective. You know, we're relationships, family, love is everything for us. And when you start having babies and stuff, you want to do everything to keep the family together. And sometimes it's not the best thing for the family. It's not the best thing for you. It was really killing me on the inside. And so when I finally decided to walk away from that situation, that's when I was able to really breathe and able to really see what it was that I want, that God wanted to do in my life. I really had to start from scratch. And it really started for me humbling myself. That was really the turning point. Acknowledging where I was in my life, which is where I didn't want to be. I had a failed marriage. I didn't have any money in the bank, but it was something inside of me. I desired more. And I'm not necessarily sure if that's something that can be taught. It was just something that was inside of me, and I wanted to go after that thing, and I was ready to go after that thing. And so I was able to share my story in a book that I published a few years back, Love Incorruptible, where I really journeyed. That main character was based off of me, and it was her journey through childhood trauma and, coming out of a toxic relationship, but then finding herself. And in that process of finding myself, the entrepreneur was able to really come to life. I was one of those folks that when I was at my 9 to 5 job, I knew I didn't belong there. I went to college because I really wanted to prove a point to myself because I had a baby as a teenager. I didn't want to be a statistic. And so I got a degree just to prove that I wasn't going to be a statistic. I had no intention on using that degree. I had no intention on using that
That's a
degree.
lot
It was
of
really
us.
to prove a point.
Yeah.
And by the grace of God, I got a full ride scholarship, so I didn't have to go, in debt behind it. But the really turning point for me was just, enough is enough, and having to start a life over from scratch at 35, takes a lot of humility. But I'm grateful for the folks that God has brought into my life. To be able to help me rebuild my life. And so, being able to work with Mike and the business that we work with, it's not even just about us. Like he said, it's about the people around you, the collective, the community, the family that we built here. And these are folks coming from different backgrounds. I mean, you can be a mailman, you can be in retail, you can be a domestic abuse survivor. And as long as you have the will, and the desire to become more and really to change your life, you can have anything you want. You just have to be willing to keep going and not quit. And so, yeah, and that's kind of how we got here. And we have a couple of cool events coming up this weekend too.
Nice,
Well,
nice.
yeah, tell us about some of those events you got coming up because I know. Yeah, let's hear about those because this is something that we should get people to attend to because if you two are both successful, obviously there's got to rub off on some of us. So
Yeah, and then you all have amazing stories. I mean, as I said, when we hear about successful people, we always picture somebody different from us, from who came from nothing, basically.
right,
Jasmine starting on your life over at 35 years old with 3 kids. Then we have Mike here, who was who didn't even finish college, and was a mailman, and now he's a successful entrepreneur. So it's something where we need more people like you, and then the two of y'all are collaborating. So it's kind of like the thing that gets me is that what you said, Jasmine, is that you said when you walk in your purpose, you figured out what purpose you had. Mike said it again. It's like a lot of people are confused in terms of walking in their purpose, because how do they know when they figure out their purpose, So, I mean, the events like yours is what we need more of in our community. So let us hear about those events coming up so that we can definitely let people know where to turn to.
Absolutely. So for those that are, born and raised in San Diego like myself, I grew up going to the Kumba Festival. And so the Kumba Fest is a 3-day African American festival that happens every Black History Month in downtown San Diego.
I've heard of it.
And when I was invited to be a part of it, I was honored because it's represents history. We used to go in high school every single year, and it was a weekend where we can feel our Black pride because they're not teaching us that in public schools. So it gave us an opportunity to eat our food, support our businesses, immerse ourselves in our culture. Kumba stands for creativity. So being able to be a part of the step show that they do and the plays and the spoken word and the singing. And it's just always been such an amazing event to be a part of. And so we'll be there on Saturday at 3 p.m. On the 26th. It's a free event. Our segment is a free event. And so I'm putting together a panel of some amazing friends. Mike will be one of them. I'm grateful for him flying all the way out from Washington, D.C. But, San Diego's not a too shabby place to come visit. You know
It's
what
a
I
tough
mean?
life out here.
But we'll be doing a panel titled Healing Stories for the Culture. And I think it's important, like we're talking about right now, our stories. It helps us to understand that we're not alone. And if we've been through similar situations and have been able to come out of that, it gives us an example of something to aspire to be. I definitely am a proponent of normalizing these types of conversations, healing in the Black community, and our healing, mentally and in our hearts and in our money. I mean, that's my mantra for 2022 is helping women heal their hearts, their mind, and their money. And I feel like if we can talk about these things and share our stories, all someone needs is awareness. All they need is, one story, one word, something somebody says that can totally change the trajectory of their lives. So to be able to, have the floor at the Kumba Fest is going to be amazing. So that panel is going to include Mr. Humes, myself. I have Dom Waltower, who is a domestic violence prevention advocate. He actually was an abusee as a child, but then he became an abuser. And so I love how he shares his story of both sides of the spectrum. And now, speaking on military bases and, really creating awareness around that. Chida Rebecca, who I know is a friend of GOD Radio 1, and Leonard Thompson. She is a communications and media mavenista, I call her. Her family has the longest running Black newspaper here in San Diego.
That's right.
She'll be on the panel with us. And then Jewel McDougall, who is also a marriage family therapist and a clinician. So we'll be able to have someone that's an expert in mental health to help us navigate that conversation with the audience. But I'm excited because I want to include the audience in the conversation. And I really want us to, really have some breakthroughs. I'm expecting that on Saturday at the Kumba Fest. So we'll be there at 3 p.m. And you can go to my link on Instagram and register for it. That event is free.
Cool. We'll
Nice.
put that in the comment section to make sure that individuals get a chance to log on and go to your Instagram and attend. And I've been to the Kumba Fest, I think once or twice. Dahan puts that on, correct?
Yep. Dahan Blevins.
Dahan Blevins is the man. So I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of the things that you're going to talk about on that topic of domestic abuse and relationships and things of that nature, purpose, is something that, we like to talk about a lot here on Let's Talk About It. And one of the main goals of our show is to help people get from one level to the next level when it comes to success. And specifically in purchasing real estate, Clinton being a real estate broker and myself being a loan officer. I give them the money, he finds the homes for them. And so we realized in doing this show that, okay, and personal, talking to people personally is a lot of times, I want to buy a home. And then it's like, okay, your income, your assets, this and it's like, you're not, FICO score, man, you're not prepared to purchase a home. And realize that when it comes to buying real estate, whether you live in the house or not, you own real estate, that there's some things that you have to get right first. And we realize if you get both of them right, you can have a good life. You get one or both of them right, one wrong, life will be a little hard, but you can make it through. You get both of them wrong, life is going to be hard. And those two things we said you have to get right before you buy real estate is the purpose or your career you choose and the person you marry. You choose the wrong career, you spend most of your time during the day at this career, your life is going to be like, oh.
Right.
You married the wrong person, and you go home, and it's like, oh, this is a double whammy.
Right.
So you guys have unique experiences and background. What are you guys' thoughts about the career you choose / purpose, because purpose is involved in that, and the person you marry, or even if you choose to be single? What are you guys' thoughts about that?
And just to expand what he's saying, there is an economic part to it too. so it's not just because we realize it's mental, but as you said, Jasmine, we have some like money traumas that we have brought from our past. And one of the things that in terms of when we were looking at some of the statistics last week with the millionaires, and the reason why we said we looked at millionaires is because number one, that's the middle class right now, and one of the things that we looked at was the trends of the millionaires, which is one of them is 76% of them are married, and then 95% of them own real estate. And so we've been in the trenches where we see people want to buy real estate or want to the want to invest in real estate, but mentally, a lot of times they're not really ready. So
Right.
yeah, so a lot of times it's because it's kind of like they have the idea, like you had the idea way before Mike. You said that you wanted to buy real estate, but it's kind of like you had to be in a place where now not only you can buy real estate, because if somebody gave you $1 million and you want to buy real estate, you still wasn't happy. Even though, well, I mean, you said you still weren't happy when you bought your real estate, but so you had to change that mental aspect of how you view money. So, what are your opinion? What and based upon your experiences in terms of number one, the person you marry and the career you choose?
Well, we're both divorced, so I don't know
I
if
was 0 for 2 in that situation. I was like, wait, so I chose the wrong career, although it did allow me to buy a house, but then yeah, I was divorced. So yeah. But so I fall in that what it was 76 percentile bracket of someone who earns 7 figures and not married. But
Right.
I do. I think that it's important. I do think those are probably 2 important factors, and that's the great thing about statistics is they can change, right? I mean,
Right.
when you look at certain things, but certain things are just grounded in it, and I'm sure 95% of them, obviously being in one category speaks volumes as
Right.
to it being something that constitutes a family, right? It's something that is important. I know for me. I was looking at the factors. I didn't know how important my credit was. In college back then, they give you a T-shirt or a credit card, right, or, or a gift card to get some lunch, and you can ruin your credit. And so I didn't know how important that was in that process. But I think for me, it was so key that my environment dictated that the only way I could get out of it was I just wanted to get as far away from it as possible. Not in a sense of now I go back to the same place where I grew up. And I know this is totally off topic, but now I'm able to give and provide Christmas for hundreds of kids in my same elementary school. So I'm back in that same community constantly. But my mindset of getting out of it was whatever it was going to take. All right. I was willing to do whatever it was going to take. And so whether that meant I was married or whether that meant I found the right career or the wrong career, I was willing to do it. I did not want to be dependent. I think this may be more of a male perspective. As the man, as the provider, especially as a Black man, I just wanted to be able to provide. I grew up in a single parent household where my mom had to do. And so I grew up early on wanting to provide. My mom reminds me that when I was in high school, my senior year, she said, I don't know if you know this, but you had more money in your account than I did because I was I was just saving. I was always saving for something. So it was important to me because I wanted to leave that environment. And so I do think the mindset and I think association plays a huge part in it, right? It's who you're around. Because if you're around folks who are homeowners, more often than not, you want to own a home, right? You're around folks who read, you want to read. You're around folks who use profanity, you're going to use profanity, right? It's more than not, right? You heard those saying, right? You're home with 9 broke friends, you're bound to be the 10th one, right?
For sure.
And so I just wanted to be in an environment that was going to allow me to work, willing to do that as well.
Nice.
Well, we heard your story, Jasmine, but kind of elaborate a little bit because I saw that laugh.
I was like, I don't know how these guys want me to answer this question. How important is, the job you're in, or is really, where you invest in your time. I mean, Mike said it right now, your associations, and sometimes your spouse may not be the best association. So you want to, make sure that, I mean, what I've learned in rebuilding my life is and when you learn more about you, become confident in you, become more clear about you, the things that you want out of life, the things that drive you, the things that you don't want. It allows you to attract, the right people around you. And that includes a spouse as well. And so if you're constantly working on yourself, hopefully you have a spouse that's doing the same thing. That way, that environment at home is an environment that can be nurtured for growth. And the same with the job. If you don't like your job, if you hate your job, then, look internally first, look internally first, because sometimes we're complaining and we're not grateful for what we already have.
Right.
And
Yeah.
God's not going to give us more if we can't be grateful for what we currently have. And I know the last position that I was at job wise, I love what I did in terms of serving the mental health population. I worked at a nonprofit, but Mike knows I was at a place where I was complaining every day about my boss. And it wasn't until I really found some ways to appreciate that job that I had peace about it when they finally fired me. But I ended up getting peace about my experience there, and then also being able to look back at the things I was able to actually learn and apply from that job. So I think it's all about you. You're always the factor in anything. And if, like Jim Rohn says, you're not a tree, you can change. So you don't have to be in something that you don't want to be in if it's not serving you. And, for me, it was a marriage, and I think it was best for both of us. And now, coming full circle years later, we're able to actually co-parent our kids, and we have a positive environment. And so I definitely think that it goes back to you and really getting to know you. And that's when you can start to usher in the things that you truly deserve in life.
Now, I'm glad you
Yeah.
mentioned that because the relationship piece is we're not saying get into a relationship.
Right. Exactly. That's
Right.
I was going
And
to
I don't got
clarify
you.
that.
You can be
It's
successful single now.
right.
Right.
It's deciding. Okay, is the relationship good for me right now? It might be better for me later on down the road when I get some things in order,
Right.
or and same thing. Actually making sure that you're choosing the right career. Okay, I'm in this job now. A lot of what Mike said, and a lot of what you said, Jasmine. I'm in this job now. But while I'm in this job, I'm gonna be working on my legacy at the same time. And Jasmine, you said one thing that kind of hit me like here. I have to tell myself is to be the humble part.
Hmm.
That humble part is difficult when you think you got a little feeling yourself a little bit,
Hmm.
and then you look back it's like you know what I ain't all that I thought I was, but
Mm.
I really ain't all that. I gotta start from the bottom to get back to where I need to go to. Uh, I'm glad you guys talked about that because we want to make it clear that it's not everyone's going to have the same journey. Everyone's going to have
Right.
different journeys and no one can tell you exactly what
Right.
to do.
And we're not a marriage police here. We believe number one is just taking your time.
We
Find
believe in it, though.
Yeah, we believe in it,
Yeah.
but it's the right person. It doesn't have to be where you. But what and why we kind of look at it in this way is because number one is that we've seen where marriage will be better for some people who are based upon income. Because we're seeing that in our community too. We see a lot of single parent homes, and a lot of those homes cannot make that transition into home ownership. So changing that. I mean, the conversation, or just having the conversation about it, and having a stable environment also does and a good healthy relationship with money comes from a stable environment too. So that we've seen that does help in shifting the mindset into the key word here is building generational wealth. We're not saying hey you should be married to be successful. No, we're just saying that choose wisely. And at the same time, too,
Absolutely.
we are big.
I think what you're saying is
proponents
so
of that,
key though,
yeah.
because and obviously you guys deal with it on a daily, right?
Right.
This is what you see on a daily basis. So do you see couples that, and I guess asking questions like, do you see couples who are forced to stay together because of a real estate transaction, or is it something that it forces them to maybe set a business plan that they didn't have at
Right.
first?
I think it's the
You know,
latter.
it,
The
yeah,
latter,
it
yeah.
forced you to really come together. And I know in
Right.
my case that wasn't the case, right? Having someone that was really that wanted to continue to grow, and that's been many years ago. So I think both Jasmine and I are both pro marriage, right? But at the same time, it's so key to find the right person that's for you. I mean, most people spend more time focusing on planning out their vacation than they will the person they're going to spend the rest of their life with. So
Sure. Yeah.
That's true.
or their wedding, and then
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
That's a whole nother hour right there, man. You're going.
yeah, and there's I think that what you guys are doing is so great now, and I'm gonna try to make it down there to the Kumba Fest to be in the audience and watch what you guys are going to talk about, get a chance to meet you guys in person, and hopefully continue this conversation more offline. But we got about 3 minutes, a little less than 3 minutes left. So Mike, before we get off, what is the one thing you want the audience to know, and how they can go from where they're at to multimillionaire?
It's your wants and reasons. It all starts with your reason why. Why do we get up, right? Why do we do the things that we do? My why early on was my mom, as I talked about, putting her in a position where she could retire, but most importantly, stay retired. She just turned 84, and she's been retired for 25 years, which has been a tremendous blessing. Then it was my daughter, and now my daughters, right? I never wanted to be the father that missed anything, so I never missed field trips. I never missed anything. And my daughter still jokes, Dad used to go on more field trips than I did. So whatever your wants and reasons are, giving back to my community, huge, right? We've been able to adopt villages in Haiti, Dominican Republic, build a girls' orphanage in Guatemala with some friends, Costa Rica. We feed families locally who don't even know where it comes from, and go back to the inner city where I grew up and teach and develop folks. So find out what your wants and reasons are. It doesn't have to be on a massive scale. Secondly, get around the right people. I know we have the Saturday event, but I'm not flying 6 hours just for that event. We actually have a more personal event that Jasmine and I will be doing, where it'll be conversations more deep and in depth like this. Third, shows like this. This is where you get it. Like, I mean, I can't imagine being able to invest an hour and get this type of content on a daily, weekly basis, however often you do it, with the statistics that are backed up. And where we can have these types of conversations. I have a podcast, the We Won't Quit podcast, as well. And it's folks who embody my quote that it's impossible to stop a man or woman who will not quit. And so you get to hear from folks like yourselves and like Jasmine, who's been there, who embody that and who just refuse to quit, whether it's from, the inner city to maybe working a 9-to-5 and building a successful family, and not necessarily a 7-figure income. And I have folks up there who've earned a 9-figure income, right? So it's a beautiful thing, but you're going to glean something from each and every story.
Nice. Awesome. And real quick, on that podcast, where can they find you? Where can they get that podcast?
It's on YouTube. They can go right to, or they can just go to wewon'tquit.com and subscribe. It's The Real Mike Humes on YouTube, and they can get it there. And of course, on all streaming platforms as well. They can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, and every place in between. And it's every week.
Awesome.
Nice.
And we got
1 minute.
1 minute, but Jasmine, speak about how one could go from your quick advice on how one could go from working a 9-to-5 to working for yourself.
Show up on Sunday at 12 o'clock. So we're having another event that I want to make sure that we definitely mention for those that watch this interview that want to meet Mr. Humes in person, want to hear his story in a little bit more in depth and how he built his wealth. On Sunday at 12 o'clock, we'll be at Impasta Restaurant in Lemon Grove. It's a new restaurant. And they can go to the link in my bio on Instagram to register. It's a free event. It's a networking event. So we want professionals like yourself to come out, entrepreneurs in real estate, insurance, credit. Come on out, rub shoulders, meet each other, exchange business cards. But I'll be doing a one-on-one Q&A with Mr. Humes, similar to this, where you'll get an opportunity in person to actually meet him. Definitely standards in place as well. But if you go to that link in my bio on Instagram, you can find out about that free event as well. And it's Sunday at 12 o'clock. And so you gentlemen are more than welcome to come down as well. And you can learn how he built wealth, and we can ask some of those questions in person as well. So I wanted to drop that in there for you guys.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I just want to say thank you so much to the two of y'all for coming on and sharing your stories. I think this is what's needed. It was raw, it was real, and it was authentic. And we do appreciate you. And we want to just encourage you to keep on doing what y'all doing.
Thank you.
We appreciate you too. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. Don't hang up just yet, but we're gonna sign off. So thank you guys for listening to another episode of Let's Talk About It. I am your co-host, Mr. William Burties. This is Clinton James.
Yes, sir.
We'll see you guys same time, same place next week.